Hello, my friends and family across the world. How are you doing today? So, I am going to be telling you about the experiences not only that I have had, but experiences across the country in these protests that are happening in the wake of George Floyd's death. And Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and many, many more that we just aren't going to be able to account for. If you'll bear with me, I am going to be reading these accounts that we have put together, me and a friend of mine have put together in detailed organization so that we could get this information out to people who aren't able to see exactly what is happening here in the United States of America. Well, there have been a lot of narratives that have been curated to, for lack of a better phrase, create stories that may not necessarily be true. I live in a city of approximately 2 million people. I've been to some of these protests and I have seen the angst on both sides of the table. But when you are peacefully protesting for something such as racial injustice in this country, you are going to be tense. This is something that they know. So they are using this against peaceful protesters. Sorry, this is a little heavy. Now, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as many of you know, Derek Chauvin murdered in cold blood George Floyd on May 25th. If I already said that, I apologize again. I hope that we all feel the same. This happened in the presence of 3 other officers as well, 2 of whom were on, respectively, Derek Chauvin was knee on the neck. We know that story, 8 minutes and 46 seconds with a knee on the neck. 2 minutes and 43 seconds after an officer said, "I don't have a pulse." Another officer was just standing there and did nothing to stop it. Also in Minneapolis, there's supposed to be a law, or not a law, but a policy in the police department where if you notice that a fellow officer is using excessive force, you are supposed to intervene to stop them, and none of the officers did that. That is why they used that policy when firing the other 3 officers and now charging them. The next day, after George Floyd's death, protests began in Minneapolis, which culminated in a group of thousands of protesters gathering outside of the 3rd precinct chanting, "I can't breathe," and "Hands up, don't shoot," clearly stating that they will no longer accept the misconduct and brutality of the Minneapolis Police Department. They demanded Derek Chauvin be charged for murder for his actions the day prior. The same day the police had deployed a riot containment unit, which used tear gas to disperse protesters. Tear gas is illegal to use in warfare, and American police are using it liberally. Not to say other countries aren't. I don't know the state in those countries. I can only speak to the U.S. Following these events, on May 27th, the protests had escalated to riots. There were severe fires that the city was unable to contain, as well as dozens of businesses that were vandalized. This continued into the next day. On May 28th, protesters burned down the 3rd precinct of Minneapolis. On May 29th, the protests were no longer contained to Minneapolis. Atlanta, Georgia, New York City, New York had broken into riots on a similar scale. On May 31st, Donald Trump gave an address in which he threatened to deploy the U.S. military. Since then, every day has been large-scale protests across the nation. All 50 states and over 400 cities have protested since then. We are seeing a movement larger than any domestic movement in modern history. Counter-protesters have aggressed on protesters in many forms, including vehicles, hunting bows, and even explosives. Again, as I said, I've been in some of these protests, and I want to start with San Antonio because that is where I'm from. These are the protests that I have been to. On, I believe, let me double check my calendar real quick. I believe it was May 30th, this Saturday. Yes. On May 30th, I went to a protest. We were peacefully protesting. I will be posting those videos as well as all of the links that were used to gather the information that's going to be in this video in the comment section. If just in case any of you want to see for yourselves exactly what is happening. Now, that being said, on May 30th, Saturday, I had attended a protest with my fellow countrymen to fight for this racial injustice, fight against this racial injustice. And we marched on the police headquarters. Everything was fine. We marched back to Travis Park, which is where the protests were. Everything was fine. We marched on the Alamo, and things stayed fine until maybe, I don't want to, I think it was like 5 or 10 minutes after we had marched on the protest, or the Alamo. The counter-protesters were a little, they were antsy. They had their guns, living in Texas, and, pretty much everywhere in the U.S., people are quick to jump to their Second Amendment. So, as we are there, tensions get a little heated, and a lot of the protesters started running, fearing for their safety. Rightfully so. As we were running, I noticed a group of counter-protesters dispersing into the crowd. One of these counter-protesters actually came up to the group that I was with and asked if we owned any businesses downtown or if we even lived downtown. Take what you will from that information. I know what I took out of it. It did seem a little insightful. It seemed like they were building up to something. Now, we also have another account from San Antonio. Again, as I said, bear with me. I am reading all of this information to you. And as I said, I will be posting the information in the comment section below this. Links and all, so that you can see this information for yourself. So this story was from another protester in San Antonio as well. And I believe this one was Tuesday. It was definitely it started getting heated more towards the night. Again, I believe it was Tuesday, June 2nd. This is one protester's account of that. When I left the protest last night, it was peaceful. I asked multiple cops what happens after curfew. It was right on the curfew when I asked, and they said nothing happens as long as everything stays peaceful. Today, the reports say that when the protests got back to the county courthouse, they were met by a wall of cops, and then the protesters started getting angry and throwing glass bottles. This is 100% false. When we got back to the courthouse, there was no wall of cops, and the protest moved into the courtyard, and everybody laid down for 8 minutes and 46 seconds chanting, "I can't breathe." Also, after 5 hours there, walking through the crowd, I had not seen one glass bottle, and all stores were closed before I left, so where would they even get glass bottles? Reports also say that protesters gathered around the Alamo and threw glass bottles at cops. I was gone by that point, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube showing nonviolent protesters all of a sudden getting gassed and having rubber and wooden bullets shot at them. And again, what glass bottles? As for the videos that were posted on YouTube, I will be searching for those videos. I should have done better and had that information ready prior to this. I do apologize. But again, once I find those videos will be uploaded to the comment section. So, as far as this goes, I have given you my account of the protest that I had been to on Saturday. Also, there was also a protest on Monday, June 1st, that was supposed to be scheduled at 1 p.m. at the Bexar County Courthouse. When I showed up at 3, there was nobody there, so me and my buddy kind of just walked around and started our own little protest, met up with a bunch of people. As we were doing this small protest, it was probably 30 or 35 of us. We had marched to the Alamo, and there were a couple of counter protesters there, a couple of people just there trying to defend the Alamo, if you will, that got a little antsy with us. Thankfully, that one was able to stay peaceful. That is and then, I'd been to a protest on Wednesday as well, and that one, as the time that I was able to be there, it had stayed peaceful. I have not heard any accounts of it losing the ability, losing the peaceful aspect of it, for lack of a better phrase. There is also there are also outside agitators that, in terms of news agencies, who were kind of trying to get protesters to admit that they wanted violence to happen, to say that they thought all cops deserved to die. They were being, my apologies, I almost losing my voice because of the protesting. They were just asking questions in ways that were trying to get the answers phrased in a manner that was attacking, so that they could paint the picture that us protesters were the problem. Moreover, there will be, again, more information on this as well. Now, some of these are going to be out of date, or out of order in terms of date. I just wanted to start with the San Antonio one, as having personal experience with it. So in Buffalo, New York, on June 4th, police assaulted a senior citizen, clearly causing a severe head injury. When they had knocked him down, he hit his head on the ground and started bleeding. He has been hospitalized, and there is no at the moment there is no word on his condition. Again, if we get any updates on his condition, they will be posted in the comment section below. There were the 2 police officers who had encountered the protester, the 75-year-old protester, were suspended from office, and then the 57 other people in the emergency response team in Buffalo, New York, threatened to resign as a form of protest because those 2 cops, who had, again, assaulted an elderly man in a form of, those 57 officers threatened to resign in a form of protest. There is currently, as I looked into the information, there was currently no charges being levied. Nothing other than I heard about the 2 suspensions. Now, I don't know if you quite understand that, but an elderly man poses no threat, no weapons, just wants to speak with an officer and is assaulted. It's unacceptable. All of this is unacceptable. The way that they treat the protesters, the way they incite riots, is unacceptable. I don't want to let my opinions get in the way of this too much. I do apologize for being unbiased in this way. I am trying to present you the facts, but as you come to see some of these facts in the way that we are being treated as human beings and people who are just peacefully protesting, as someone who has been personally a part of that, it sickens me deeply. So in this video, also, again, I keep repeating the point that this information will be in the comment section. I just want to make sure that that is known. I will try to stop repeating that sentiment the farther and further I get into this video. So we have an incident in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, that was, I believe, June 2nd. I saw the video dated June 2nd. I don't know if that means the video was released on June 2nd and it happened prior, or if it took place on June 2nd. So do not quote me on the date. But the situation nonetheless was a protester who was giving an empowering speech, letting police know that he felt for them just as much as he felt for the protesters that he was protesting with. He loved them just as much as he loved the people that he was protesting with. He reached out a hand of solidarity to them, and he was arrested. No rhyme, no reason why. He was just arrested. To my knowledge, I believe they have been asked to issue an apology. I have not seen a reasoning as to why they arrested him. When I get that information, you will get that information as soon as I get that information. He was trying to build a bridge of solidarity between the protesters and the police. He was offering that out, and we know, you will know how that ended. On May 31st, Los Angeles Police Chief Michael Moore gave an address to the press in which he stated that George Floyd's death is on the hands of the protesters as much as it is on the hands of the officers who killed him. He used this to try and delegitimize the actions and claims of protesters as they were mourning, and implied that they themselves were the monsters. I don't see how one can see this civil unrest happening in the wake of George Floyd's death. And I also would like to throw in the name again, Breonna Taylor. I don't want that name to be lost on people either. Sorry. I don't see how you can blame the protesters in this for the death of George Floyd. He issued an apology for those statements, but why make those statements in the first place? There was no reason. In the name of trying to present you with only the facts, I'm going to move on without expressing any more sentiment on that one, just because I don't want this to be about how I feel about things, and more about just getting you the information, getting you the facts, so that you can decide for yourself how you feel about this, just so you can see the state that America is in at the moment. Again, on May 31st, Seattle, Washington, it was anywhere between 1 to 1:30. The police issued a tweet saying that at 1:30 in the morning, they were responding to a burglary of an already chipped window. But in this video, All you see is the police trying to smash a window in. If the window's already chipped, I don't see how you struggle that much with cracking the window. Not only that, but if you're responding to a burglary, usually when they respond to burglaries, it's just go through the door. It's a sense of urgency. These officers showed no sense of urgency. They showed only a sense of wanting to get through that window. It was the window of a Target on 2nd and what was the name of the street? I apologize. Again, that information will be in the comment section but it was in Seattle, Washington. It was a Target, and it didn't seem like they were responding to a burglary. But again, you'll see that in the video. On May 30th in Atlanta, Georgia, there was a couple that was just in their car driving. Well, presumably protests are raging around them. Officers proceeded to open their door and try to force them out of the car. When they were trying to tell them that they weren't part of the protests, they were just on their way home, the officers began to tase them and then pulled them out of the car. Again, the video doesn't show the events leading up to this. We only have this to go to, so I don't know if they were covering to say they weren't at the protest or riots. I'm not, again, there is nothing showing the events prior to that, at least at the moment. Again, if I get a video detailing the events prior to that, I will get it to you. The 6 officers involved in that arrest, or I'm not really sure what to call it, in that altercation, in that incident, if you may, or if you will, they were charged. The information for what they were charged with is not out there at the moment. I will, again, you will get that as soon as I get it. The police chief in Atlanta, Georgia, also came out and said that those officers were good people. Just, again, showing the state of mind between protesters who were protesting against racial injustice and the police who were trying to maintain the peace. I would also, if you'll bear with me just a moment, I would like to share another story that I will be posting the information to in the link, and then this will wrap up the video, just to try and show you kind of what's going on here. There was, if you'll give me, after I get this information to you, if you'll give me a second, I'll try to find out where it was for you, just so you have that information as well. I apologize. I've been very active recently on this. This is just something this is another one that I really think needs to be out there, that people need to know. This was fact checked by USA Today, a prominent newspaper or news outlet here in America. This was in Asheville. Police were at a medical station. It was the only medical station in the city of Asheville to be sanctioned to be open past curfew. They were holding on to water bottles and medical supplies there for the protesters. Police are seen stabbing each and every individual water bottle and then destroying medical supplies. I will also be posting that information down below as well. Not to mention the countless other stories of people as medics, EMTs, however you will, being pepper sprayed or tear gassed for helping protesters who were clearly in distress. That is quite literally a war crime. I just want you to hear this information and see this information whenever and read it for yourself if you're able to, if you have the time to. I really hope that you do have the time to, so that you understand exactly what is happening right now. Together, we have to fight these injustices. Together, we will make this a better place. I love each and every one of you. I'm signing out.